Okay folks, pardon the mess, but a quick wrap up on the 2005 R1150RTP. Now, as you know from previous videos, we often run into situations where the bike has been deliberately crippled in some way to stop the official authorities' functions from working. So in this case, we had a number of things. Handlebar switch wiring had been cut, sort of underneath the petrol tank. Not a problem, we replaced all of that. Obviously the siren wiring had been cut as well, so no problem, we replaced all of that. And we've got the siren controllers up there. But what you don't find out until you've got everything on the bike and testing it, obviously, before we button it up and put all the bodywork on, is whether or not everything works. As you know, previous video, both lights up front and pole light work. No dramas there. So we went to test the sirens. Now all the wiring is correct. So check continuity on both sets of cables for that siren and that siren, technically a speaker. Ran it all the way back up here. Then noticed that on the control module, so this is a signal generator, in other words, a tone generator or siren generator. So these wires have been checked pin by pin, those are all good. That big connector right there, you will note, has 2, 4, 6, 8 pins, and one of them is blank. Now, what we found out was that because there are various generations of these harnesses, the harness that was on the wiring on this bike has a different pin out. So that's the harness that runs down the bike that the switches, those switches on the handlebars right there, are connecting to. So obviously what's happened is, despite being the same year on the tag on the wiring, that's the tag down there, and we checked this, and the same number of pins, 2, 4, 6, 8, you can see that there are 2 blank pins in here. So if I hold up what we know works, and this is a little bit difficult one-handed, yeah, so it should be like this. We hold them side by side. There's your problem, Bob. So this harness is incorrect for this bike. These tone generators or signal generators are standard on the bike. What changes is the pin out depending on the year. So we will need to unfortunately, remove this harness. Not a big job. Just down the side underneath there, and runs up underneath the petrol tank. Just to the connectors, which are about right here, and then we'll replace it with the correct 8-pin or 8 holes with 7 connections version of the wiring harness. So thought you'd like to see that. So that's why we do extensive testing on all these things before we ever ship them. Good to know that that's a catch. We will be back. Obviously, a little bit of progress over the weekend as well. So have tested the rear pole light. This is just a generic version of the light we use for testing. With that box, everything works, all the switches work, that's all good. The chrome is on and finally installed, looking very schmicko, I have to say, very shiny. We've got a couple of updates to do in here. So the original tail light assembly that came with the bike was horribly buggered. So we've got to get another socket for this. The wiring is there, we'll get that fixed. And then that can screw in. And then once we have this wiring harness problem sorted here, and we've tested it and everything works, then we can button this all up and put the radio box and radio box lid on that you saw in previous videos. In fact, that sits on that, that sits on that. So there you go, that's it. Bit of an update, doesn't sound like a lot of work, but getting to this point when they've been sort of very roughly decommissioned does take quite a while. So progress has been made, and in the next video, hopefully, we'll be able to replace that harness and get the sounds working that scare everybody when you're driving. So until that video, be well, and I'll catch you then. Cheers.